Good afternoon, everybody, and good evening in the US. Thank you very much for joining us today for this group webinar by Zelira Therapeutics. We have Chairman Osagie Imasogie and Global CEO Oludare Odumosu presenting to us today off the back of the announcement this morning, which many of you will have seen, regarding the results that have come out in relation to Zelira's diabetic nerve pain drug outperforming a big pharma drug. I don't want to take all the limelight away from the two of you because I know you're very excited. So I'll hand across to you, Osagie, and to do a brief intro, and then Dare can take us through the slides. And as usual, if anybody has any questions that they want to ask either Osagie or Dare, please type them into the Q&A box. And after this short presentation, I'll moderate a Q&A. So Osagie, I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ron. I appreciate that. Good morning for those in Australia and good evening for those of our shareholders in the US. As Ron said, we're quite pleased to have this dialogue after the results we just announced. The normal notices. So I'm going to turn over to Dare to take us through the results, and then we'll do the Q&A later on. Dare, over to you, Dr. Odumosu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning once again to our family in Australia, and good evening to our friends and family in the US as well. Zelira is very pleased to announce our top-line results for the clinical trial that was conducted here in the United States under an IRB, under the auspices of an IRB, where we did a 12-week observational comparative head-to-head, comparing Zelira's formulation, which we gave a code name ZLTL007, as a potential investigative drug for the treatment of diabetic nerve trial. We did so as a head-to-head, an observational head-to-head, non-blinded study, but I'm comparing it against a well-established, well-known, industry-validated standard treatment for the treatment of diabetic nerve trial, and that drug is Lyrica pregabalin. As I said, we designed that drug to be a multi-arm study, which I will speak to in a second, but very, very specifically to show statistical significance if, in fact, the effect modifications observed were as such. We're very pleased today to announce some key results. One is that our investigative drug, ZLTL007, materially outperformed Lyrica in meeting the primary endpoint of our study, which is the reduction in the numeric rating scale model for pain measurement, as well as key secondary endpoints such as the visual analog scale, the McGill, as well as a very important primary endpoint, which is safety. I'm very, very pleased that for number one, our drug materially outperformed Lyrica in the reduction of NRS. Two, our drug, which meant that our drug significantly decreased symptom severity in the patients that participated in the study. There were no serious adverse events, which was the major measurement of safety in this study design. That is very, very significant because it immediately tells us that ZLTL007 is safe and tolerable. As well as, number three, ZLTL007 significantly decreased the visual analog scale measurement and other secondary endpoints. One of which we have announced here, in addition to the VAS, is the McGill. Others will be announced, will be analyzed and announced over the coming months. Why is this very exciting for our company? is that one, Zelira's investigative drug ZLTL-007 in this IRB multi-arm head-to-head study against Lyrica demonstrated improved efficacy and showed enhanced safety with no SAEs reported in the study, and it's tolerable because more than up to 40 patients took the drug in this study. And the studies that, the results we're seeing and we're reporting as Topline shows that our drug performed much better than Lyrica, which was the reference drug. We are excited as a company to proceed to evaluating this drug and investigating it further because of the potential. First, we always focus on the patients. Our job at Zelira is to improve the lives of the patients we serve. But also, we're excited to talk to our investors today because the potential of this drug, knowing what we know about how Lyrica has performed in the market, is very exciting. And so we will proceed over the next few months to think about how we evaluate ZLTL-007 in formal trials as part of our launch, learn, and develop strategy. Next slide, please. I'm just going to take the next few minutes to share with us what the study design was and how the study arrived at the results, the top-line results we have announced this morning. We've reported before that the study was designed, and we gave full details in a previous press release, but just in summary, the study was designed to have 3 arms with 20 patients, up to 20 patients approved in each arm. With a 60% study of this size, that sample size was found to be powered to show statistical significance because we wanted to be able to see if there was a difference in the effects we were measuring. And based on the type of study, 60 patients, that number was shows that the study can be powered to give us statistical significance. So that was very exciting. In each group, in group 1, we had patients who were already taking Lyrica, pregabalin. That means those patients, by their physician's recommendation, were taking up to 300 milligrams of Lyrica daily to manage their pain. In the second group was a group where our investigative drug, ZLTL-007, was the only drug that these patients would take for the duration of the study. In the third group, we had patients who were already taking Lyrica per the recommendation of their physician, and then were given ZLTL-007 when they were enrolled and screened to be able to participate in our study. That population constitutes what we call the ZEL, or the study population for this study. As I described, the patients who were taking our drug was in a size 2 capsule form. Our investigative drug was also designed, if I might add, using Zelira's proprietary technology, Zerady, which we've talked about. And that's a technology that powered our capsule in a size 2 form. The participants who took our drug received a drug form that contained 74.5 milligrams of active drug material up to twice daily by the recommendation of the physician. In the reference arm, they took their Lyrica normally up to 300 milligrams. The dose was adjusted by the investigative physician, and could have been increased up to 3 times where deemed necessary at the investigator's discretion. Again, the study setting was observational, so patients were screened per our inclusion and exclusion criteria. Patients were advised on the parameters of the study. Patients who would be taking the drugs were supplied with the drug after they were the base measurements were taken per the questionnaires and the safety labs. and they were allowed to go home and to take the drug within the privacy of their home, as the law allows. Next slide, please. Next slide. We're very pleased that today, Zelira is reporting that ZLT-L007 met its primary endpoint for the study, which was the measurement of the numeric rating scale model for pain reduction. And our results showed that ZLT-L007 outperformed the reference arm of the study, which was Lyrica pregabalin. This slide is, I'm going to walk us through it very quickly, shows the degree or the percentage change in the severity of pain from baseline over the time periods, the 3 time periods for which the NRS was measured. That's at 30 days, at 60 days, and at 90 days. You will see, as the graph shows, that the bars in blue are for the group 1, the people who took Lyrica pregabalin alone for the duration of the study. The orange bars are the participants who took the investigative drug ZLT-L007 only, and the gray bars is the what we call the synergistic or the combined group of patients who were already on Lyrica, but were also then given Zelira's ZLT-L007 during the study. For the group in blue, the group 1, that's the reference group patients who took Lyrica alone, you will observe that over 30 days, there was about a 33% reduction in the severity of their pain as measured by the NRS. That percentage change decreased over 60 days to about 20% and increased again over 90 days to about 35%. So the effect modification of Lyrica we observed in this study showed that over 90 days, there was about a 35% reduction in the severity of pain as measured by NRS. What is exciting is that for the group that were on ZLT-L007, over the first 30 days, there was about the same measure of change in severity of pain for that population compared to the reference group. But you would observe that by 60 days, that effect modification had changed, had gone up to 71%. And over 90 days, there was a percentage change of about 78%. Quite significant in the effect modification. And you will observe for the third group, which is the group that took were on Lyrica and took and were given ZLT-L007, that over 30 days, there was about a 20% effect modification in the reduction of the severity symptoms, pain severity symptoms. And over 60 days, that increased to about 50% and increased to about 72.5% over 90 days. At this point, we have reported this as a top line. We're very excited about it. In addition, next slide, please. We're also pleased to announce that ZLT-L007 was also safe and well tolerated during this study. This is because we did not report any serious adverse events as a measure of safety for the duration of this study. In addition to meeting the safety endpoint, our study also met the so far analyzed secondary endpoints, such as the visual analog scale, which is very significant. The visual analog scale is by itself a validated measure of decrease in pain as a model for diabetic nerve trials. The NRS is also another model. In our study, we observed at this point of our analysis that our NRS scores and our VAS scores tied. Two separate models independently verified the effect modification that we observed. And that is very, very important to note. Other measures, secondary endpoint measures, we took about 16 different measures, and so far, the short form McGill pain questionnaire and the neuropathic pain symptoms inventory and others will be reported out over the next few months. But it is important for me to mention that some of the measures of the short form McGill score have also shown that the study met its secondary endpoints. Another measure of safety that also confirmed at this point from a clinical perspective that the results that we're seeing are not, that the patients, one, were truly safe and that the drug was tolerable, is that in addition to over 40 safety lab measures that were taken at each of these time points, one of the measures of health per the physician was the change in blood pressure. We're very pleased that of the patients that participated in our study, there was no significant change over 90 days in their systolic and diastolic blood pressure. And this was particularly exciting from a clinical perspective for the clinical team. So taken together, we are very pleased that so far we are reporting that as a top line result that the comparative head-to-head study conducted under the auspices of our IRB against Lyrica showed that our drug ZLT-L007 was found to be safe, tolerable, efficacious, and outperformed the comparative arm, which is Lyrica, as a validated reference drug. With that, I am very pleased to turn it back to the chairman of our board, Mr. Imasogie.
Thank you, Dr. Odumosu, for your presentation. So, I'm a dollars and cents guy, right? So what does this all mean? And why are we very excited? Obviously, we're pleased with the science. Obviously, we're pleased with the results. And obviously, we're pleased with the fact that in a head-to-head trial, which, you know, some would say is rather ballsy, we did not just as well as Lyrica, but we actually did better than Lyrica. And we did better than Lyrica in a material way. So what that means from an economic perspective is that we think that there are very strong basis for us to have a high level of confidence of the commercial viability of ZLT L007. Neuropathic pain is well documented, it's well known. It's a worldwide phenomenon. It exists across the board. We specifically chose Lyrica because we wanted there to be no ambiguity as to two crucial issues. The first one being, you know, the level of pain relief that is meaningful to patients. Lyrica has been a very successful drug. And so, as Dr. Odumosu said, it was a natural template for us to use it as a comparator, because that level of pain relief, the consumers and patients have said is meaningful to them. But the second reason was an economic reason, because what the market has said over the years is that the level of pain relief that Lyrica can deliver was worth in its peak year over $5 billion. So, two major objectives: use it to prove that the pain relief is meaningful to patients and to clinicians, and use it to prove that there's a commercial viability if you can deliver that level of pain relief. That was our objective starting up. What we've been able to achieve is to surpass that, is to provide a higher level of pain relief. So, you know, that gives us a pretty good sense that we think there's a viability here. Dr. Odumosu talked about our product, our investigation product. And it talked about the size of it. It said it was in a site number 2 pharmaceutical grade capsule. Just so that people could get an idea of what that means. This is what it means. So it's this little capsule that has done this. 74.5 milligrams against Lyrica's 300 milligrams. It's this capsule that did that. And the only reason we could do it in this size capsule is that we in Zelira have a technology which we've talked about in the past called Zelira, which allows us to create free-flowing powder. And that technology not only gives us the ability to create free-flowing powder, but it enhances the bioavailability of whatever product we create. So that has allowed us to do a 74.5 milligram tablet in that tiny capsule and to provide this level of pain relief. So we're pretty pleased. We think this could be an additional game changer for the company. And you know, we hope our investors are as pleased as we are. And we hope that the market over time will equally be as pleased as we are. We think this is a very, very, very interesting set of results. And, you know, based on that, I'm more than glad, Ron, to open it up for questions and answers. And Daria and I will be pleased to answer any questions.
Thanks, Osagie, and thanks, Daria, for the presentation, both of you. Really exciting days ahead and fantastic results from this initial trial. We have some questions that have come through. So maybe I might start with a couple of questions to you, Daria, and just trying to, there's a lot of information in the slide deck and not all of us are bioscientists or biostatisticians or, you know, so maybe if we can just try and simplify it down a little bit. What were the primary findings of the clinical trial that compared ZLTL007 to Lyrica?
Thank you, Ron. Very simply stated, the primary findings of this trial is that ZLT outperformed Lyrica in terms of efficacy, in terms of safety, and in terms of tolerability. What does that mean? It achieved a significant reduction in pain score measured using a validated model called the NRS. And that translates to a decrease in the severity of their symptoms. Also, the drug was very safe for the patients who took it, and they tolerated it because there were no serious adverse events reported.
Thank you. And then in terms of the secondary endpoints that you referred to in the presentation today, can you elaborate a bit more on what those endpoints were that were met by ZLTL007?
Yes, Ron, I can actually. So the study was designed to have one primary endpoint, which was the NRS, and a host of secondary endpoints. We've talked about the primary endpoint already, which was the NRS. Not only did it meet that for safety, but also achieved that decrease in symptom severity. It also did it in one of the major secondary endpoints, which we've also reported, which is the visual analog scale, which and others, such as the McGill scores. And what that means is that it supports the results that we reported in the primary, which is the improved efficacy of our drug ZLTL007 in pain management compared to Lyrica. So over the next few months, we'll continue to analyze and publish additional findings from the study, including the full study report.
Got a couple of questions that came in, and you may or may not be able to comment on this, but questions that came in relation to the side effects of Lyrica. Are you able to comment on what the side effects when taking Lyrica are?
So simply stated, the side effects of Lyrica are published or well known. They're everywhere. And they include but are not limited to fatigue, to weight gain, and on and on and on. What we do know about those side effects that come with the stated efficacy is that they're debilitating. Some have used even stronger words to describe them. So that we do know as a reference. And as the chairman of our board said, the level of efficacy that comes with those horrible side effects have put Lyrica as a very, as a reference in terms of a validated pain management drug. So we understand what, the side effects that I just discussed comes with that. We are very excited about the potential of our drug that at this level shown no SAEs reported. That excites us as we continue to investigate it going forward.
So when you reference no SAEs reported in the material that's been lodged to the exchange today, so that's including some of those side effects so none of the side effects of Lyrica have come through in terms of the test that's been done on ZLT-L007?
At this point, I'm happy to say yes. The side effect, the serious adverse events, some of which were observed for Lyrica when Lyrica was done. One thing I should emphasize at this point, Ron, which is a very, very good point you brought up, is that the model by which we have investigated this comparative head-to-head is the same study design that was used to investigate Lyrica for diabetic nerve trial. So to emphasize the point you've made, which is very important, some of the side effects that were observed for Lyrica in the Lyrica study were not reported in our study by way of serious adverse events. And that is very powerful.
Right. Maybe one last question, and then I'll touch on some questions for Osagie, if I might. How do the positive comparative results that you've talked about today, how do they position ZLT-L007 in the market for nerve pain drugs going forward?
The very obvious one is one can walk away from this meeting today with an answer to that question and think about it this way. The positive comparative results against Lyrica that we've seen today potentially positions our drug ZLT-L007 as a potentially safer, more effective, and tolerable option in the marketplace. With the efficacy and safety that we've seen, this could potentially offer a competitive advantage over existing modifications. I mean, think about it. We talk about if you know better, you do better. If you know that there is an option that could give you, that is safer, more tolerable, and potentially more efficacious, would you consider that? I believe that most people would. And that offers a competitive advantage in the marketplace against existing competition, right? And lastly, as we say at Zelira again, our aim, our goal is to improve the lives of the patients we serve. We're very, very focused on providing attractive alternatives for patients that are under the burden of this debilitating diabetic nerve pain. And of course, it opens up multiple opportunities for our company and for our investors.
Question on FDA approval. How long before ZLT is given FDA approval?
So if I may, the answer is, as we've said, we are now beginning to really think about proceeding to formal trials. We do know that diabetic nerve drug trials over time have taken somewhere between 10, 15 years to come to market. Our launch, learn, and develop model, as you've seen, as we've announced for the HOPE product, which we have announced advancement towards FDA, has allowed us to take away a lot of the guess game, has increased our confidence going into the trial, and as a result, has the potential really shortened the way we've designed and our regulatory roadmap to success. We expect the same type of trajectory for diabetic nerve. We've reported that we believe we can bring hope through the FDA in the 36 to 48 month range. We believe that maybe just a little bit longer than that because of this type of study, but certainly not a 10 or 15 year market time frame. We think it's a much shorter time frame.
Yep. I might have I'll ask a couple of questions now of Osagie, if I might, please. I'll give you a little bit of a break, Dare. So Osagie, in a nutshell, what's the significance of these findings for Zelira's future?
The potential to have a drug that has already proven in this particular study a level of pain relief that historically has generated over $5 billion in annual sales. And those are just the facts, right? That's what Lyrica did. We have, in this study, shown that we reduced the pain relief by almost double, if in some instances more than double, what Lyrica has done. So it's not a very complicated idea, right? if the level of pain relief that Lyrica delivered was rewarded with over $5 billion in annual sales in its peak years, what do you think the level of pain relief that we are providing could possibly generate? And oh, by the way, we're doing this with a tiny capsule at 74.5 milligrams. As this data gets further analyzed, we hope to get even more clarity. One of the interesting questions that I have, and again, as we analyze the data, we will get clarity on this. In the study design, the physicians had the prerogative to increase the dose. So the baseline was 1 capsule twice a day, what we call BID. And depending on the level of relief, pain relief the patient had, and dialogue with their physician, the physician could increase that by another capsule and ultimately by yet another capsule. It'll be very interesting to see as we analyze the data, whether or not that actually happened. Our suspicion is that that did not happen, which is absolutely amazing because it means that the level of pain relief was sufficient with just 2 capsules, 1 taken by mouth twice a day. And that level of pain relief was more than double the level of pain relief that Lyrica delivered. So we think that from an investor perspective, it should give people a level of encouragement that we're on the right path, and that this could become a very meaningful product for our company.
Just in terms of following that further, in terms of the ZLTL007 becoming a meaningful product, what's the global market opportunity as you see it?
Well, peak year sales, Lyrica did $5 billion. The market right now for diabetic neuropathy is close to $4 billion. This is after Lyrica, taking out Lyrica's numbers. And it continues to grow at roughly 6% on a CAGR basis. So depending on the number of months we need to get this thing in front of the FDA, do the more formal clinical trials, and hopefully, fingers and toes crossed, we get the product approved. By that time, the global diabetic neuropathy market could be well north of $5 or $6 billion. And that is the market that we are going to try to go into with our patent-protected proprietary product, appropriately priced. So when you think about the value of that market with an appropriate price for a new patented product, it's actually much larger than that, because the good chunk of that market right now may not be necessarily patented products in that space. So we're very excited about that. I should also emphasize, and I've said this a couple of times, but it's worth repeating, we only use Lyrica as a validated model for pain relief. Part of what we're going to evaluate as we look at the data and understand it a bit more, that's why it takes some time to really get your hand around this, is whether or not we should seek other indications within the world of pain, other than diabetic neuropathy. So if we have sufficient data to give us confidence to do that, then the market potential is even larger. So it could be a very, very interesting product as we progress our efforts.
Can you give investors, whether they be shareholders or potential investors that are now looking obviously at the stock off the back of today's announcement, can you give any sort of rough timing on what's next for ZLT-L007 in terms of future trial details? Any extra color you can give on next steps, please?
Well, a couple of things. The first one is this. We've taken the position, and we've been saying this for the last 24 to 36 months, that we're a biotech company, we're a biopharmaceutical company, that the value proposition that we represent is the potential of accessing this new field of pharmacology. Remember, until relatively recent, it was illegal to work on cannabinoids. And so most investigators could not do any work on that space. There are already over 150 cannabinoids that have been identified and characterized. The math is simple. If you do a formulation that has 2 of those cannabinoids, you could do over 11,000 combinations. If you added phytocannabinoids like terpenes, you could multiply that level of formulations significantly. So we've always been, the reason we started Zelira, the whole reason was to do exactly what we're doing now, which was to take a pharmaceutical approach to understand that cannabinoids are nothing different from natural products, which have been the most successful source of drugs in the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, aspirin comes from the bark of a tree. The bulk of the drugs that we currently have on the market come from nature. In the case of cannabinoids, our bodies have an endocannabinoid system. So we're even better suited to taking molecules that are of the cannabinoid class. So our whole approach was to really take a pharmaceutical hard science approach to doing this. That is exactly what we've done. But the second aspect about timing, because there was this opportunity to have a regulatory arbitrage, we developed this whole strategy of launch, learn, and develop. For most people in the pharmaceutical industry, they would say, hold on a minute, that's backwards. But we've explained this many times, and we are showing you the outcome of that. It allows us to launch into the market proprietary patent-protected formulations of our cannabinoids, targeting certain conditions. We've done that with autism, with our HOPE product, which we've announced. HOPE in Pennsylvania alone, over 9.5 million doses were dispensed over 3 years. And that was the launch portion. And then we captured a lot of information during that period. That is the learn portion. And that information is what gave us a high level of confidence that this product was safe and efficacious. And therefore, we could now approach the FDA and start the formal trial, which is the last piece, which is the developed portion. So what does this level of confidence give? In this case, we did an even more rigorous trial, even more rigorous than what we did with our HOPE franchise. And in this case, with 60 subjects, 40 of whom took our drug, 40 of the 60 took our drug, and we had no reported SAEs. that gives us a confidence level on the safety profile. On the efficacy profile, it gives us a high level of confidence because we had two different independent pain models that validated the efficacy, and not just the efficacy in a head-to-head, but materially improved efficacy. So, as Dr. Odumosu mentioned earlier on, how does this influence our timeline? Because we know and we have a level of confidence that the product is safe and efficacious, we can design much more efficient clinical trials because we've taken away the guesswork. A lot of things that you need to do in the clinical trial process is that you're trying to understand your dose. You're trying to understand your safety envelope. You're trying to understand your efficacy level. But we have answers to all this, at least to our level of confidence, so that you can now design a trial that will be more efficient and therefore faster and therefore less expensive and get into the marketplace. The last thing I would say about that is it is not unusual within the pharmaceutical sector that once a product is significantly discharged in terms of the risk, that other companies that are much larger could become interested. And so that is also a possibility. So when we think about timelines, we're thinking about timelines to create additional value for our shareholders. And we think that starts today. We think that starts by the announcement of our results. And then we'll see how things progress from there.
I'm conscious of time and we've kind of run a bit over, but maybe one last question before we close out. It's a question I asked the last time we had this webinar. I had a webinar, and it reflects on some of the more recent funding structures that you've used, where experienced biopharmaceutical investors, experienced cannabinoid investors from overseas have invested into certain products that you've launched, or you will launch, or you are planning to launch, at valuations substantially higher for the product than what the market cap for the entire group was. Now, clearly, you've got a multiple shots at goal strategy and you keep scoring goals. So what are they seeing that investors into the ASX holding company, if you like, aren't seeing?
Well, it's a question of, my mother used to say, which means that it is what the eye is looking for that the eye sees, right? Cognitive blindness, right? So if you're looking for a biotech company, a biopharmaceutical company that has exciting compounds and exciting programs that is generating really cool data, if that is what you are looking for, you will see us. But if you're looking for a company that is selling pot, if you're looking for a company that is selling cannabis, if that is what is exciting you, you will not see us, because that's not what we are. So what we've been talking about for the last 24, 36 months is that we're a biopharmaceutical company. Investors that have recently invested in our company have seen that, and they understand that. We've announced, for example, the SPV that we created for Hope. The math is relatively straightforward, right? It's not a complicated math, right? 45% of that SPV will be held by the investors. The investors in aggregate will bring $34, $35 million US dollars to the table to get 45% of one product. We hold the balance of 55%. The math is relatively straightforward, right? If you, the value of that SPV is roughly 75 million US dollars. The value of our 55% of it is roughly 42 odd million dollars. If you convert that to Aussie dollars, that's roughly $60 million of value in one product, in one SPV. I don't know, we've said this repeatedly. I don't know what else we can say. The math is relatively straightforward. And so we've always taken the view that our stock price was not reflective of our value. And now we've just announced data on an even bigger opportunity that targets an even bigger market of diabetic neuropathy. And we did it against a reference drug that in its peak year did $5 billion in sales. And we more than doubled the level of pain relief without compromising on safety. So if you are interested in a biopharmaceutical company that is doing some really cool stuff, I think you will see us. But if you're not, you won't see us. And we are fortunate, very fortunate, that we have investors who do see us and have been able to support our initiatives.
On that note, Osagie, thank you very much. And Dare, also thank you very much for presenting this evening your time, lunchtime hours today. Really exciting news that came out this morning regarding the trial results and the performance of ZLTL-007. I look forward to calling it a name soon.
Yes, we have to come up with a name. We have to come up with a name.
Yeah, just as long as it doesn't have James Bond in the name, given the 007. But look, anybody on the call, if you have any other questions, please reach out to me, ron.batchelor@automicgroup.com.au. If you have any further questions, I'm sure we can either answer over email, or if there's more detailed information, we can obviously maybe organize a time with Dare to give a further update. But we appreciate everybody attending today and listening in to Osagie and Dare. And gents, thank you again for your time. And we look forward to more exciting news coming out about the multiple products that you have in the portfolio.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
To everybody.
Bye.